Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to Harmonizing with the Cosmos. I'm Marie O'Neill, founder of Padma Life Coaching and your host for this retreat. Welcome. We are all so happy that you've been able to join us. Today, we have a wonderful lineup of speakers for you to help you work with your chart, to help you work through living your best life on a daily basis. Now, before we get started, there's some housekeeping items that I need to go over. There's also setting intention for the event, and I will let you know the order in which the speakers will present. So just to get us in the frame of mind for this evening, the first thing that I want you to do is just sit quietly for a minute and just clear your mind as much as you can, because we all think all the time. And I want you to be in this space. So sit quietly and envision yourself with light coming from the heavens, coming from the universe down through your body. Typically, I would ask you to sage yourself to balance your auric field. However, I do understand that some people have smoke detectors in their room and some people are allergic to the sage. So what I want you to do is picture the light going down through your body, and I'll walk you through this. So close your eyes, take a deep breath in, let it out slowly. Take another deep breath in and let it out. Good. One more time. Another deep breath in and let it out. See a beautiful shimmering white light. It's coming from the heavens and it's coming to you. See it coming through your crown chakra, flowing down through your head. Envision it lighting up your eyes and your nose and your mouth. See it going down through your neck. It's like a nectar of love. Envision it going down your arms, through your hands, down your chest, down through your stomach. See it circling all of the organs in your body. It's pure light, pure love. As it moves through, see yourself get lighter and your worries melting away. Envision this light going down through your legs, your knees, your lower legs, and down through your feet and out. And see this light going down into Mother Earth. You are connected to Mother Earth and the sky. Now, as you sit here, envision a thin cord, golden cord, that is connected in your heart. It is also going down through your body, all the way down into the earth. going down into the molten rock, and it is grounding you. Sit quietly just for a minute and breathe, and just bring your awareness into the space where you are. Good. All right. Now, for those of you who brought a candle to the ceremony, the candle represents illumination and light. I have my candle here and I'm going to light it, and it will stay lit for the duration of this retreat. I ask you, if you'd like to light your candle and leave it lit for the duration of the retreat. Now, the next thing is, if you have your stone, you can hold on to your stone if you feel nervous or you just need something to hold on to help keep you grounded. This is why we have the stone, and it's also representative of the earth, which is so important. Good. Now we're going to just begin. We're going to begin the retreat. If you have technical issues or something happens and you get dropped from the Zoom call or you're having any type of technical problems, Nathan is the tech person who you would talk to. And Nathan he has put his phone number there so that you can contact him with any questions that you might have concerning tech. The presentation is going to be, we will have Lori Barnes first, David Pond will go second, and then we have Katie Kay. Now, each of these presenters have a wonderful talk for you tonight. You need to have your intention in mind of what it is you want to receive from this retreat. So go ahead and take a minute just to send up a prayer to whomever you pray to and set your intention for the retreat, what it is you want to receive from this retreat. I'll give you just about a minute to do that. Okay, perfect. Are there any questions that you have as the audience that you would like me to answer for you before we get started? Okay, perfect. There will be time for Q&A. Okay, perfect. Nathan sent me a note. There will be time after each presentation for Q&A. So if you have questions, write those questions down and ask the presenter after they talk. You'll have about 10-15 minutes to ask them questions. Tomorrow night, of course, is the panel discussion where you can ask questions to all of the presenters. So let's go ahead and get started with our first presentation. Our first presenter is Lori Barnes. Lori, a little bit about Lori. Lori is a bicontinental astrologer living in Rome, Italy, and Illinois. She has an MA in marketing and communication, an MA in psychology, and a BA in business management. Lori started studying modern astrology in 1994 and has incorporated traditional astrology into her practice. She started doing this in 2017. Lori mixes her background in psychotherapy and positive psychology with modern and traditional astrology to offer a unique mix of services that include coaching, mentoring, and consultation. Lori is the marketing director for Kepler College and teaches the course Marketing for Astrologers there. She served on the AFAN steering committee from 2019 to 2023 and OPA board as marketing director starting in January of 2024. So Lori is quite well-rounded and the marketing expert in the astrological community, or at least one of the marketing experts. Today, Lori's talk is on navigate a harmonious path through Mercury retrograde cycles. Discover the transformative potential of Mercury retrograde, often misunderstood as a period of chaos and miscommunication. Mercury retrograde can actually be a powerful opportunity for introspection, growth, and realignment. Join us as we dive into the practical strategies and positive approaches to not just survive, but thrive during Mercury retrograde cycles. In this insightful session, you'll learn how to work with the unique energy of Mercury retrograde with intentional reflection that can be used for forward momentum. We will explore how revisiting unfinished projects and resolving outworn situations and relationships can be beneficial during the retrograde cycle. Hello, Lori.
Hello. Thank you for
Welcome.
having me.
Oh my goodness, this is absolutely wonderful. I am so glad that you're here and able to give this lovely talk. And thank you for staying up late. Lori is in Rome, Italy, so it is absolutely, it's after midnight there. So,
Yeah,
all
it's quarter
right.
after one.
Quarter after one, exactly. So Lori,
Yes,
go right ahead and take it away, all right?
this video is choppy, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because you can actually see Mercury. You're not going to see it retrograde, but I think this explains a little bit more about that motion in the sky that sometimes seems so hard to understand. So there you go. Marie already told you about me, so I don't think I need to say much more about that. I am an astrology coach, and that is where I focus my practice. And I'm going to talk to you today about Mercury retrograde. I just want to move this because I want to see you all. There we go. So we know that Mercury retrograde is the apparent backward motion of the planet Mercury in the sky. And the actual motion is that it is not going retrograde. It's going around the sun, just like we are on Earth. But we see this retrograde motion because of our view of Mercury from Earth as it's orbiting the sun. It creates that illusion from Earth. But what I want to talk to you today is not about the astronomy, but about how to work with Mercury retrograde. I like to work with these cycles. I find it very helpful in my own life. And like you, I hear a lot of negative things about Mercury retrograde. So I thought today it would be very nice to talk about Mercury retrograde in a more positive frame. So that's what we're going to do today. Now we know pop astrology will talk about the communication mishaps and the travel delays and the technology issues. And yeah, that's probably a thing. I know not all astrologers agree on that. But what I hope to do is help you let go of fear of Mercury retrograde, if you happen to have any. And really, it's about reframing it and really working with this cycle. And I'll share with you how I work with the cycle. And I really see it as 3 opportunities a year for me to slow down and look at what I've done since the last retrograde. Now, I will look further back depending on what I'm working on. But the concept is that each retrograde cycle, Mercury retrograde cycle, is a chance to stop and just take note of how far have I come since the last retrograde. And I see it as an opportunity to catch things when they're still small before they become big. So that's what we'll be talking about today. I like to say review, reflect, realign. That's my uh, motto, you could say, or mantra. That was the word I'm looking for. It's like my Mercury retrograde mantra: review, reflect, and realign. And work with that cycle intentionally. So that means, first of all, I have started to look forward to Mercury retrogrades when all my friends are still like, no, no, not Mercury retrograde. But for me, I'm kind of like, okay, that means I'm going to do everything within my power to not start brand new things, because this is a great time to look at what I've done, to go back over all that work that I've done since the last retrograde period or before, because some projects take longer than 3 months, right? If you're working on something that takes a really long time to put together, then the retrograde cycle is a great time to look at your progress. And if there's any small cracks in the foundation, to fix now before they become larger cracks. And if you do that, then you're really setting yourself up for a better chance of long-term success. This is some of the ways that you can work with Mercury retrograde. I have a lot of things to do under Mercury retrograde, because that's the other thing we hear a lot of, right? Things not to do. But really, that's not helpful. And if you go into psychology, it's a similar thing. It's like, if you're trying to help someone, you really have to talk about things to do. If you're trying to change habits, you have to replace those behaviors with something else. So it's that same concept of, well, if there's so much fear around Mercury retrograde, and of course, part of that is commercial pop astrology, because it's one of the things that media can latch onto and talk about, and people kind of know what it is. It's become more of a commercial pop phenomenon. So it has created some of that fear. And I think instead, it's like, okay, well, what is this energy really telling us, and how do we work with it strategically? Journaling is one thing to do. And for me, I have started to do less journaling and really more focus on my business projects, because now I work for myself full time and I'm doing a lot of projects and I'm writing a lot of content, whether it's a digital course or a little ebook, whatever it is, I'm doing a lot of that on my own. And so when Mercury retrograde comes along, it's like, okay, oh, good. I get to go and pull all the stuff up that I've done in the last 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, depending on how big the project is, and go through it all. And I'll tell you, I rework a lot of things under Mercury retrograde, and I'm making it better. So I do get excited about Mercury retrograde. I plan ahead and I buffer my schedule and I slow down the pace. So these are things that you can do. And I am going to provide these slides to Marie. So if you don't have to write notes or anything, just sit back and relax and listen, and you'll get a copy of all this so you don't have to write anything down. Oh, there was a word there that I forgot to say: declutter. It's not an RE word. It's a DE word, but we can throw that in with all those other RE words. It's a great thing to do under a Mercury retrograde. So here's some of those RE words for you, because that is a thing to do under a Mercury retrograde, are things that start with an RE. So you notice my mantra is there with all my RE words, but here's a bunch more. If you're looking for some, you can take them and use them. And if you're an astrologer, I know some of you are, and you may end up doing your own Mercury retrograde presentation. So if you're looking for RE words, here they are. These are things to do under a Mercury retrograde. So revisit abandoned projects, return to unfinished work. Those are two different things, right? There's something that maybe you started 5 years ago and you really want to get back to it, and you just don't seem to ever find time. We'll do it under a Mercury retrograde. Pull it back out, relook at it. Return to unfinished work. That's probably stuff that you've been working on, but then 10 other things fell on your schedule and it got pushed to the side. Well, you want to maybe bring that back in during a Mercury retrograde. So you can read this. I'm sure that you have used these RE words, and it is funny because my family and my friends, people who've heard me talk about Mercury retrograde for the last 30 years, this is the one thing that they latch onto. They'll be trying to come up with RE words, and it makes me laugh when I hear them doing that. Well, I replanned it, so it's okay. And I'm like, okay, so you're getting it. It's like, get away from the fear. And I have to say that this whole concept of working with Mercury retrograde, I think I started working on it maybe 6 years ago. Could have been longer, but it was probably longer because I was working at a company. And that's how it all got started. I was like, we have to be able to work with Mercury retrograde, and really its philosophy too. Like, we're astrologers, and I think we all believe in our trade because we're practicing it. And we can't just have this one cycle that's all fearful and bad. I mean, come on, we've got all kinds of outer planets and hard aspects to do that kind of stuff. There has to be something more to Mercury retrograde that is helpful. And that's when I reframed it for myself, and I started working with it differently. And then I started telling people the way I was working with it differently. And it works. People are shifting, and I love that. So I'm hoping that that rubs off a bit today. So moving along with other things to do under Mercury retrograde is, well, looking at office and career. So writing and revision, that's one of my favorite things to do under Mercury retrograde. And I may be doing a lot of writing because I've pulled out a project that got set aside. And I think that happens to a lot of people, where we get so busy with the day to day that what gets squeezed out are those bigger projects that take 3 to 4 hours. That's, writing a book, creating a presentation, or making a YouTube video. These things take time, and it's not just having the 4 hours, it's being in the right mindset. And I love Mercury retrograde for doing that kind of stuff, because I already go in and I block dates and times off my calendar. I'm a online astrologer, so everybody books with me online. So I can just go in and take that space on my calendar, and nobody can book a reading with me. And I intentionally block space off my calendar. And I do that more often during Mercury retrograde than when it's direct, not because I'm scared or fearful of technology breaking down, but because I know that this is really a great time to get into a project, and especially things that I'm already working on. And if you're anything like me, you're always working on something, probably like 10 different things, and they're all in different stages of completion. So taking Mercury retrograde and spending more time working on those things can be very valuable. And of course, it's going to depend on your chart, and we'll talk about that today as well. Sorry, I was just checking the time, but I realized I didn't check the time I started. So looking at the clock is not going to help me. Okay, what else? Let's see. Schedule, reevaluate your goals. Okay, big one. Love this one. I mean, this is not just for office and career. This is just in general, but I put it here. Goals. If you write goals, and I hope you do, I'm a big fan of writing down what you want to achieve and manifest. There is research behind that. People who write down their goals are more likely to achieve them. I don't remember the percentage, but I do remember that that was researched out of a university. So I always write them down. And I believe that Mercury retrograde is a fantastic time to do your progress report. And when you set those goals, that can be really important as well. And because I like to think of the 3 Mercury retrogrades a year as kind of like a package. But what is that year? Is it your birthday year? Is it the calendar year? Is it the year from Aries ingress to Aries ingress? And that's up to you. But I do like, it helps me to think about a packet of time, and 1 year a time frame is a really good one. So anyway, I don't want to get off topic. I'm going to move on to the next one. Relationships. Here's another great one to work on during Mercury retrograde. And I'm going to speak about this generally, but it is important to look at your chart, because if you have a Mercury retrograde in your 7th house, or maybe your 11th house, or your 4th house, relationship resolutions might be more important during a Mercury retrograde than if the Mercury is retrograde in your 10th house, right? So, you want to look at those things. But I'm just going to speak about this as something to do Mercury retrograde. So strengthen your relationships. We all have conflicts at one time or another with another person. So under a Mercury retrograde is a good time to work on those resolutions. Now, I'm not saying that it's pleasant. I'm not saying it'll be more pleasant. It actually might be less pleasant, because hopefully during the retrograde, things will come out that need to come out, right? Because sometimes we hold these things in, and we know that there's a problem. We know that there's a resolution that needs to happen, but we don't want to do it. Conflict is not fun, especially if you have a lot of Libra in your chart. But still, conflict resolution is important. And that is another good thing to do under a retrograde. You want to get those things out and you want to get them resolved. The other thing is reconnecting. It's a really good RE word. When Mercury retrograde comes around, you may have people you haven't talked to in a long time, and you might feel like reconnecting with them. It's a good thing to do under a retrograde. If you're like me and you've moved away from everyone that you know and love, then picking up the phone during a Mercury retrograde can be a good thing to do. And then one piece of advice is just to be careful how you try to resolve any of those things that need resolving, because there's situations, and it's going to depend on your chart, where you may be less inclined to say what needs to be said, and then you're going to use this Mercury retrograde to let it out. And if it's been building up for a long time, it may not come out very nice, very pretty. In fact, it could come out pretty harsh, depending on the where the retrograde is and your own chart. So just to think about that, like if you're going to use Mercury retrograde to work on a conflict resolution with another person, to use compassionate communication. That whole golden rule, speak to others the way you would want to be spoken to yourself. This does get into the whole concept of how do I work with a Mercury retrograde? And there are 4 phases of the cycle. There's the pre-retrograde. That's when Mercury first goes over the degree that it will retrograde back to. Then we get to the actual retrograde. That's the second part. The third is when it goes direct. And the 4th is when it goes back over the degree where it went retrograde. I like to think about the pre-shadow, so that first phase, as when you're starting to slow down. You're still maybe doing some new things. You're still forward focused, but you're slowing down. You're remembering during this phase to go in and buffer your calendar. You're starting to think about, what projects do I want to work on during this retrograde? When it goes retrograde, you're working on those things, you're reviewing things, reflecting on things, and deciding what that realignment is going to look like, or you're starting to shape up what that realignment is going to look like. Then Mercury goes direct. And now you're starting to wrap up all of the retrograde work and you're starting to get ready to move forward again. At this point, you would have a list of things to do. You'd have some action items that have come out of whatever you were working on during the retrograde. And by the time you get to that fourth date, the end of the post retrograde period, you're moving forward. You are already implementing some of those things. You're already starting to really look forward. And then you get past that last date and it's like forward focus again. I'm back on, my schedule is back to normal. And hopefully you have a whole bunch of like tasks, items on your list that wouldn't have been there if you didn't stop and really do that deep dive during the Mercury retrograde. We have to check our charts. If we really want to work with Mercury retrograde in a deeply personal way, first of all, you have to know what your natal promise is. And of course, that is not what my presentation is about. And I'm not going to go deeply into that, but just define what that means. The natal promise is, what does your natal chart say? Where are my placements? What are my aspects? What are my aspect? Some people call it your aspect cluster or the driver. Like, what are the main things? Do you have a T-square? Do you have a stellium? Do you have a lot of planets in angular houses, or do you have more cadent houses? Like, what is your chart saying? Because when Mercury's retrograde, you're going to want to know if it's activating something in your chart. Is it like going to retrograde over a placement or an angle? Is it in a house that doesn't have any other placements? Does it make just a few aspects or a whole bunch of aspects? Because not every Mercury retrograde cycle is going to be the same. Actually, each one's going to be different. Each one will be unique. Even if it's in the same sign of one that you worked with before, the other planets are going to be in different places. So you really want to take a look at that. Like, what is, what the sky is doing that's important. If Mercury is going to retrograde and it's going to be conjunct Pluto or something like that's a statement. So you want to consider the sky in the current moment or the current time period of the retrograde, but really you want to know what your chart is saying, because I think everyone here is somewhat trained in astrology, so the movement in the sky isn't going to create something new. It's going to activate something already there, and since it's spending that extra time in a particular part of your chart, well, what is that part of your chart saying to you about your whole life, about what you're supposed to be working on? And what about your progressions? Like, what's going on now? So, and what are your major transits? Looking at all of those things and taking all those things into consideration will give you the extra information for what you want to hone in on during the retrograde. We had the last one in Aries, and it was in my fifth house. So I was like super excited. I'm like, cool. I can't wait to have Mercury all that time in that part of my chart, and I can do all these creative things. And I was already writing a bunch of stuff, and it was great. In fact, I have a free like Mercury retrograde like download that you can get on my site, and a lot of that came out of a retrograde period when I was like, I got to write a survival guide, and I did. And so if you want that, I'll give you the link to it. It's actually in the presentation. So yeah, it's like, look at the house. Where is it retrograding through? That's going to give you a lot of information. I wanted to include this because I wasn't sure if there would be any beginners in our group. So if you're not sure what the different houses mean, this is just like a reference point that you can use. It is not comprehensive, I have to say that. I just wanted it to fit on one page, but I hit on probably the main things that those houses stand for. And you want to know that where Mercury is retrograde in your chart, and then what houses, and I'm saying that plural, it can be one or it can be more than one. If Mercury is going to change signs and you use a whole house system, for sure, you're talking two houses. If you use a quadrant system, you may have an intercepted house, and Mercury only retrogrades inside of that house or inside of that interception. So it's also know your astrology and how what your approach is. If you do use interceptions and that has meaning for you, and you have a Mercury retrograde all inside of that sign that's intercepted, what does that mean to you? And then use that as direction to help you hone in on that retrograde cycle for yourself. This is the process that I use. And I think I've talked about a lot of these things already. But I love this concept of saving time by correcting course early, right? I mean, how many times do we just go, 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 and then we find out that there was like an error or a mistake, and then we have to go back and fix that and everything else that we did after that. And this is why I love Mercury retrograde. It's like, go back and look at all your stuff that you did so that you can catch anything while it's still small. And the other thing is that I just find going back and reviewing all that, I find more inspiration to make it better. Like, I do a lot of rewrites during Mercury retrograde, and it's easy to not have time for rewrites. But if we go back and we do those rewrites, we make it so much better. And this is the thing that I try to get out to people, like, we can make stuff so much better. And I think the West just wants to go linear, right? It's always forward and higher, like, up, 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 better, 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 faster, faster, faster. But that's not nature. That's not life. I think I'm speaking to the choir here, but we live in cycles, in spirals. And Mercury retrograde is one of those spirals where it's like, if you want to go forward, you got to go backwards. Go back, check it all out, and then go forward again, and then go back and check it all out, and then go forward again, and just spiral your way upward. And I really, truly believe that you will find so much more rich information, more rich writing, more rich relationships, all of that, by going back and covering old ground and then taking that and moving forward again. I think about that, like learning just in general. How many times have you gone back to the basics? I mean, I've gone back to the basics at least 10 times. I still go back to the basics. I just read a book the other day that was just about, it was very beginner level. It's just like aspects. And it talked a little bit about secondary progressions. And I was like, gosh, it's so good to go back and reread this stuff, because even though I know how to do this and I've been doing this for years, when I go back and I reread it, I get something more out of it. Sometimes I just read the definitions of the signs, somebody else's take on what does Aries mean, what does Taurus mean. And going back and doing something like that during a Mercury retrograde can be very deepening in your learning, and can just like in your mind just activate a whole bunch of ideas that you wouldn't have had if you didn't do that. If you were on that, no, I have to do something new, forward, fast. I can't stop and go back. I have to keep focused on the future and go, go, go. I did mention this a little bit earlier, but I think this is a good thing to use. And it's not just for Mercury retrograde, it's for goal setting. Because for me, goal setting and working with Mercury retrograde, they go hand in hand. So the question that I ask you is, what is your starting point? I'm moving into starting with my birthday. It's kind of been difficult because I've been programmed for 30 plus years to do my goal setting at the new year. But because I've been working so much more with solar returns and perfections, I've decided that for me, it makes more sense to go birthday year to birthday year. So if you use solar returns and you use perfections, then it makes sense to line up your Mercury review year, like your 3 cycles, start with your birthday. And then you can look at your Lord of the Year, you can look at your solar return chart, But you also may love the idea of going with the astrological year. You start with Aries ingress, and you can use that chart. That's a widely used chart, the Aries ingress chart. So you could even take a look at that and like, what is that saying about the year for the world? And then how does it relate to my chart? And then what is actually going on in my chart? And then there's the standard good old new year, which I think is the most common, but I don't think it's the best approach whenever you start bringing astrology into the picture. these are the 4 phases that I mentioned before. And if you're not familiar with them, you can take a screenshot and you can get a copy of these slides, but this is how it works. And there's 2 degrees to be aware of. There's the degree where it retrogrades, and there's the degree that it retrogrades back to. And the pre-shadow phase is where that degree is, where it retrogrades back to. And at the post shadow phase, it's like when it gets back to where it went retrograde. I thought I'd grab the dates so that it would be easy for you to see the dates for 2024. And I know that I'm saying there's 3 in a year, and there are 3 in a year. It's just that one happened to overlap a new year. And well, actually 2, the one from last year and then the one at this year, they're both going to overlap with the new year. And I have a sample chart, which I'm going to focus on this one that's coming up next. It's in July, we'll have the pre-shadow period. In August, we'll have Mercury actually go retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo. It'll go direct August the 28th at 21 Leo, and it will get out of the entire cycle, and it will, the post-shadows phase ends and the total cycle ends at 4 degrees of Virgo. So the span of degrees of the next retrograde goes from 4 Virgo to 21 Leo. Are there any questions on that before I look at a chart?
You're welcome to unmute yourself if you have a question for Lori.
I thought we would look at this in action. And I realize this might be a little small. If you're having any trouble seeing this, just let me know. And I do have one slide that just has the one by will that might be easier to see. This one shows the pre-shadow phase. This is Mercury here. Let me get my arrow. Arrow, where are you? There we go. Okay. So you see the big red arrow is pointing at Mercury, but I have another arrow here so I can do it in real time. Here's Mercury. The outside wheel would be the transiting planets in the sky. The inner wheel is the chart of a woman, a mystery chart, and I will share with you who it is, but not right now, because I don't want you to think about that person. I want you to look at the chart. So we see that Mercury is going to pass over that pre-shadow point, 20 or degree, 21 degrees 25, because this is where it's going to retrograde back to, but it's going direct, it's going forward, and it's going to go all the way. So now I'm going to go over here to this chart on the right. And this is when it actually goes retrograde at 4 degrees, 6 minutes. So that's the span. And in this person's chart, that's going to be the 12th house and the 11th house. So you can start thinking about this like, oh, well, what types of themes are likely to come up for this person? 11th house themes and 12th house themes. So friends and network, and then wanting time to isolate, go pray on the mountain, hopefully not go to jail, because 12th house can be that too. And then we're going to go to the next page, but I'm going to get rid of these arrows first. Well, I'll have to find my eraser. There it is. All right. So now we see Mercury when it goes direct. So it's back at 21 degrees in Leo, and then we see its post-shadow ends at 4 degrees of Virgo. Now, what's changed? Let me pop back. Mars was in Taurus, pre-shadow, Gemini during the retrograde, or when the retrograde started, still in Gemini and just went into Cancer when it's in the post shadow. And then let's see, of course, the moon is going to go around, and Venus is in Virgo here. Let's see, let me go back to the first one. Venus goes from Leo to Virgo and actually runs into Mercury in Virgo. See, Venus in Leo here does not catch up with Mercury in Leo until they both are over in Virgo. So that's something to note, right? When if you're working with Mercury retrograde and you saw this, it's like, oh, Venus is going to catch up. I see Venus is going to catch up to Mercury, which you would normally not happen, right? Because Mercury usually is much faster than Venus. But when Mercury goes retrograde, it's going backwards towards Venus. And even when it's going direct for a while, it's still moving slower than Venus, and Venus can catch up with it. So you want to pay attention to those when you're working with the retrograde cycles, and look at like, well, what's going to happen with those fast moving planets? The slow moving planets probably won't be changing signs. It's possible, like when Neptune changes signs at the new year, and there's going to be a retrograde. And I didn't check to see if that's going to happen at the same time, but that's something that you want to look out for. But usually the outer planets, the slower moving planets, don't change sign during a retrograde. But I'm definitely not saying it never happens. I'm just saying that what you're really looking at are the faster moving planets during that retrograde and what they're doing, because they're going to have the potential to change signs. So I really thought that meeting of Mercury and Venus in this person's chart happening in the 12th house is very interesting. And, the difference between the 11th house and 12th house is quite large. One is very social and network and friends and marketing. And the 12th house is kind of like, leave me alone. I need time alone. And so that's what I was thinking when I was trying to imagine what this person might be working on during this Mercury retrograde. So on one hand, with Mercury in the 11th house, they might be working with friendships. They might have some things that need to be worked out, or they may have some things that about public stuff that needs to be worked out. And then Mercury's going to still go direct into the 12th house, but it'll be in Virgo. So it's almost like, oh, I have to get away from it all. But then it goes retrograde, but I can't. And I just get thrust back out there into the big networking world with all my friends. And it's like, I can't run away and hide from whatever it is I'm supposed to be working on in this Mercury retrograde. Now, that's a very different interpretation than if we were talking about the 5th house to the 6th house, my creativity. And then I'm going to go and have to work on service and do a bunch of work around that. Like my example earlier, when Mercury was retrograde in my 5th house, it was like, yeah, create, rewrite, but it was more about my creations. But then I was like, okay, cool. When Mercury goes on and gets back into my 6th house, I got to like really like get in and do the work. I got to really make this like happen. I'm going to do something with it now. So this is what you want to look at. It's like how am I going to work with this, and intentionally? That's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like, instead of kind of like letting Mercury do you, somebody made that famous saying, like, do your chart or your chart will do you. And I think it's very applicable here, that you can see what's coming. You can see the areas of life that are highlighted, that are activated, and you go and you do those things, and you're absorbing that energy. I remember I heard Bernadette Brady talk a lot about that. She was like, go do that energy, like soak it up. Don't give the universe the open door to be like, I'll do that for you. If you're not going to do it, I'll bring that to you. But if you go and you intentionally start doing those things, it's like you're absorbing up that energy. And you might get so involved in what you're doing in that retrograde that you don't notice some of those communication breakdowns that can still come along with Mercury retrograde. And, my experience is anecdotal. There's not research, as far as I know, about, you do this and then you don't have so many Mercury retrograde mishaps. But for me, I have noticed that I don't have so much of that like I did when I was doing the fear thing when I was much younger. And I was like, oh gosh, it's Mercury retrograde and the fax machine's broken and my computer won't start up and my car's broke and it's on the side of the road with a dead battery and it's just like everything's going wrong. And that was not fun. I spent too many Mercury retrogrades doing that. Okay. Questions, comment? Anybody else want to do an interpretation? Anyone in the group want to throw out some ideas? I didn't even talk yet about this person's natal chart. But here's all this. So it's a lot of text. Don't let it overwhelm you. I just wanted to have the notes there when I was here with you so that I wasn't kind of like, oh, let me interpret this chart while I'm presenting to you. So I wanted to look at first the larger themes. So what does this person have going on? Transiting Pluto in Aquarius, partile conjunct natal Mercury in the fifth house. So that's a pretty powerful transit happening. So what I'm talking about right here, you can see, oh, I have the red arrow there. So you can see Mercury right, or I'm sorry, Pluto right on this person's Mercury. So we already know that this person's going through some pretty intense ideas about their own personal creativity, or they're probably having a major transformation, a creative transformation. Something big is brewing in this person's mind. Whether they're going to get it out of their mind at this point in time, I don't know. But what else do we have going on? We have transiting Uranus square the natal sun in Aquarius. And it's opposite the Mars and the Neptune. You can see the arrow here. And here's the sun. And here's transiting Uranus. And what is transiting Uranus doing? It is forming a T-square. So she doesn't have a T-square. She has the sun square her Scorpio stuff, sun, Aquarius, partile square her Mars, which is widely conjunct Neptune. But with Uranus over there, and it's past it, right? It's a separating aspect, but it does form that T-square. So we've got the eighth house, second house, fifth house. So self-worth, her value system is probably coming into question as it has to do with her own creativity. And fifth house, Aquarius. I mean, this is a person who wants to walk to their own drum. They're an original thinker. So those two things are going on while this retrograde is happening. And then, as we talked about already, the short-term transits, Mars is going to move into Gemini, which is one of Mercury's signs, and Venus is going to catch up to Mercury in Virgo in the 12th house. So it's a really interesting period for this person where, what I didn't say yet is that Mercury starts the pre-shadow in the 11th house, across from the fifth house, across from her sun. So we've got, 8, 11, 2, 5. Her cadent houses are very, very activated. And some people would say that cadent, or not cadent, succedent houses are like working with teams. So it's not angular, which is the more active, but the succedent houses. So anyway, 11th house, I like to think of that as marketing as well, as a marketer. Third house is communication. 11th house is the network. So I like to think of it as marketing. And I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on social media, but I think that they're related, the 11th and the third. So, and then this fifth house, like with this creative, like, so many ideas. I mean, Pluto there, it's just like, wow. I mean, I can't, I would love to just tap into this person's mind and hear like what is going on in there with all that Pluto, Mercury stuff, and Uranus, like rebel. It's like there's a rebellion maybe brewing, that this Mercury retrograde if this person was my client, I'd be like, are you feeling rebellious? What are you rebelling against? What kind of revolution is going on in your life? And like what part of your life is actually being revolutionized, or but as it relates to her like self-expression. And then when I see that Mercury going retrograde in the 12th house, it's kind of like maybe there's this need to hide away, to get away too much. I'm electrified. I'm like, ugh, and I just need to go go to India, right? Or go find the ashram on top of the mountain. And I could see that person doing that in this retrograde and really like taking a deep dive into myself. Who am I? What do I want to be? How do I want to do that? And then it retrogrades back into Leo, back into the 11th house. And it's like, probably doing some of that, right? Because the retrograde is happening from the 12th house to the 11th house, then goes direct in the 11th house and starts moving forward again. So I kind of think this person might be going back and forth between like really being out there and being like, I have all these cool new ideas and I'm just bursting at the seams and I'm going to do my own thing and nobody's going to tell me what to do. And then being like, oh, I'm really tired and I got to go like take some time off. Well, it's Mercury goes back into the 12th house, it goes direct. It won't be there for a super long time. It's going to come out on the other end in the first house. And that's when we're going to see like whatever that work was, it'll be really obvious, right? Because it's the first house. It's like who I am. It's kind of like, I'm here now. I've gone through the cave. I've done the think about Star Wars, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie. I love it, seen it 50 times. Luke goes into the cave. He has to face his darkest fear, and he doesn't need a weapon, but he seems to want to take one anyway, even though Obi-Wan's like, you don't need that, and he takes it. But anyway, he faces his fear, uh, and it's like a rite of passage, like the 12th house. This person's going to have some sort of 12th house rite of passage. Do you want to know who it is now, or do you all want to make a few statements? And yeah, anyone want to say some things about the chart before I say who it is? Okay.
I think everybody wants
Oh,
the big reveal.
it's Jennifer Aniston. So yeah, I would love to tap into her beautiful mind, and I do really I like her, but I don't have access. I think that show is still on. Is it called The Morning Show? I think that's still on the air. But I'll be watching. I'd be curious to see. I don't know that Jennifer Aniston has an astrologer who's consulting with her to help her work through this one, but she's got an interesting thing going on right now, and I'd just love to know what this process is like for her. Like what, because her mind, I imagine, is just going to be like, it's Aquarius, or her natal is Aquarius Mercury and an Aquarius sun. So yeah, that's my presentation. If you do want the Mercury retrograde guide that has more information than what I presented today, it's kind of like an ebook, and then I have a companion workbook just to do like what I was talking about, like the 3 month. There's like 3 different cycles that are in the workbook, and you can journal about it. And anyway, they're there. You can use the little barcode thing on your phone and it pulls up the page and you can or I think you have to put in your email address and you can download them.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic, Lori. I loved
Yeah.
this presentation. I learned some things myself. Do you find that there is a difference with Mercury retrograde with people who are ruled by Mercury or not? Is there a difference there with how
There,
Mercury retrograde acts?
everything that I know is more anecdotal. Like I really would love to see astrology do more research so that we
Mhm.
could answer that question with more validity. But I'll share with you what I think. And I think that a natal chart with Mercury and Gemini and Virgo, but maybe people who have a lot of Gemini and Virgo in their charts, they may vibrate more with it. But I'm just a real synthesist type of astrologer
Mhm.
who thinks that, and you guys, I mean, you kind of like got to look at the whole chart. But I'll tell you the one thing that I have seen come up regularly are people with Mercury and Pisces saying that Mercury retrogrades are blown out of the water and like, what's the big deal? And I'm like, you live daily in the Mercury retrograde. Like, not really, but you know that because
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said that like it's no big deal. Like nothing's different. Why do people make such a big deal out of it? And I'll be like, where's your Mercury? Well, Mercury and Pisces. I'm like, okay, well, you are really good at dealing with it when things kind of go sideways for
Mhm.
Mercury, but not everybody else is. And I think you just really have to be attuned to your chart. Like, how does your Mercury work? But I think that what I'm presenting is it's almost more about the houses and it's more about like the place in the chart because it's spending so much time there, right? We know that when a
Mhm.
planet goes retrograde, that means it spends longer time in the chart. And especially the station points, they're sitting there, they're like sinking into your chart. So it's making a really big statement. And that's what I like to look at.
That's good. I love
Lori,
it.
can you say something about people who have Mercury retrograde natally?
Yeah, it's going to progress direct. And if you were born with a Mercury direct, it's going to progress retrograde. We all get it. Like now, of course, we all always say that the natal chart is like the main thing. And I mean, there's the thought of being more introspective if you have a Mercury retrograde chart. Um, there's also like if it's at the station, so it can be very, very slow. And also you have to look at the moon and the relationship, I think, with the Mercury and the moon. So even with Mercury retrograde natally, is it a fast moon and a Mercury retrograde? Is it Mercury retrograde in the 12th house? Because I think that's going to be far different than a Mercury retrograde in an angular house. But I know that it's going to, right? It's going to progress. Either way, it's going to progress. Yeah.
Love that. Any other questions?
Any astrologer that references Star Wars and the archetypes in Star Wars, I love it. I love that. To answer the question about, my chart is ruled by Mercury. I have Mercury in Gemini, a degree away from my ascendant in the first house. So, and my moon is in Virgo. So, to answer somebody's question earlier, and you might comment on this later, I find I'm very flexible. It doesn't necessarily. I'm a very mental person anyway, but it doesn't really. I find Mercury retrogrades easy to navigate. Actually,
Well,
so great
Yeah.
talk. Thank you.
yeah, that's good to know
Thanks.
because I'm also ruled by Mercury. And what I find is I do okay if I double check everything and triple check. If I don't, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. And
Yeah. And I'm a Libra sun and I think I'm in a magnet for Geminis. Like I can't tell you how many Gemini friends I have, just so many of them. And I have some Virgo friends as well. And they're the ones that are calling me like, oh my God, it has to be Mercury retrograde. So yeah, it's hard for me to just, and that's why I hesitate because like Justin, you have that experience, Marie, you have that experience. But then I've had friends that just like totally melt down. And that's why I'm like, you got to look at your chart because it may not be Mercury retrograde. I talk about that in the ebook. Like it might be Mercury retrograde that's representing like whatever stuff is going on. But it can also be that Pluto square your sun thing going on. And you think that Mercury retrograde is wrecking everything, and you don't even realize that you have this other really potent thing going on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or something in the third house.
Yeah,
Right,
it
right. I
sextiles.
mean,
It sextiles my Uranus in third house, so that allows for flexibility.
Love it. I
right.
love it.
I'll share something because and thank you. This was stupendous. As a Gemini that's ruled by my Mercury in Gemini retrograde, combust, I've always had sort of a carte blanche, like, okay, fine. But nevertheless, and I think it's everything that you're indicating is the synastry of the whole chart, that as I'm going through the Mercury retrograde, I go, really, Sue? This is perilous. And I'm going to take your words of advice here and strategize and slow down. And it's interesting. And I think maybe it's definitely individual chart. So I still, the jury is out for me. I sure appreciate the talk.
Oh my goodness, this was absolutely wonderful, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear the
Wonderful.
music.
All right. Yes, yes, yes. So if you can unshare your
Oh,
screen,
yes. Sorry.
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your website too, as to where people can go and get the book, the
Yes.
information on that. That's absolutely wonderful. All right. Wow. I hope everyone enjoyed our first presentation for the event. We are now moving on to our second presentation, which is being given by David Pond. David Pond is an astrologer, of course, an author, speaker, and workshop leader. David has a Master of Science degree in experiential metaphysics and has published 9 books. He's probably Gemini ruled if he's published 9 books on metaphysical topics, including Astrology for Beginners, Llewellyn's Little Book of Meditation, Astrology and Relationship, and Chakras for Beginners. David has been a practicing astrologer for over 45 years and consults with clients, helping them work with their astrology to find meaningful and fulfilling lives and to strategize through times of transformation. He lives in Olympia, Washington, and can be found at davidpond.com. David's talk today is A New Wind is Blowing. I love this title. Earth's electromagnetic energy field is going through a huge shift with the bombardment of solar flares and Earth passing through the photon belt. This raising of the frequency of the fields we are in has a huge impact on our nervous system. Many report feeling a tingling in their bodies, and sleep disruptions are common with this quickened energy. For those interested in evolving in their consciousness growth, this is a cosmic assist. Astrologically, we are all still riding the wave of the recent Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, opening unexpected opportunities for growth and expansion. Jupiter has moved into light-hearted Gemini in a harmonious trine to Pluto in Aquarius, supporting the Aquarius agenda of awakening to more of the human potential of coming together with a greater sense of our oneness. So, in this talk, we will explore ways to uplift our frequency to align with this high frequency energy and to uplift each other or each person that we come in contact within our daily lives. So, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Dave.
Well, thank you, Marie. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I think you just gave my talk, though. I'm going to be doing that about covered it right there. But I'd like to just go into the story a little bit. My first interest in astrology, I had my first reading done over 50 years ago by my sister. She was a professional astrologer before I was. And it wasn't that I was intrigued. How'd she know I was into sports? Well, she grew up with me. There's balls all around the house. But the model of consciousness itself, that I have sun in the 12th house, and well, my inner world's huge and immense, but to have a map to this inner world just let me on fire. I was a school teacher in training at that time, but I found out the kids, their parents were more interested in my view of their astrology charts than their kids' math scores. So it just kept moving in this direction. But chakras and meditation, the things other things I've written about, it's all about the same thing. It's consciousness growth. That's what interests me in astrology. I'm intrigued that it can describe so much about our personalities and whatnot, but it's our consciousness growth. What is consciousness growth? Well, isn't that becoming more conscious of what we were unconscious of before? And whether it be just our own behavior patterns or things that we weren't aware of, my goodness. But we are the first self-reflective. We're not one of the only self-reflective species on the planet that we can stop and consider our behavior. And that's what we do as astrologers. We help people stop and consider their behavior. But if we don't, I think the human species itself, if we look around the planet, without consciousness work, we're a pretty fierce tribe of people. If a person is in a survival mode and is just stuck in the lower chakras, well, it's consciousness work that we do. We pull up into the higher levels. One teacher I listened to lots of teachers and astrologers in the morning just to kind of get a cosmic tune-up. But one was asked, what's it going to take for mankind to get out of this loop that we just never get out of? It's another war, or is it the same war with a different name? Is it, or we just keep... And his answer was pretty cute, but I think it's on point. He said, when mankind learns how to be kind man, and it's humankind, not just man, of course, it's humankind. When we learn how to be kind humans. And that's what's going to shift. If a person's stuck in their lower chakras, well, they're in a survival mode, and then life, everything seems threatening. But we're in an intense time right now. People feel like there's a bit chaotic on the planet. Yeah. The space weather of the solar flares, I'd be interested if the other astrologers have been looking into this and finding out what you found out too. They're intense. We've been able to see the northern lights down in Alabama, California, Seattle. These are, it's unheard of. Just the number, they rate these solar flares in different ratings, and M class and X class are the highest ones. And that, just a few weeks ago, we could see the aurora borealis down in the United States even. There was 20 M class and 10 X class within the weekend. And compare that to 2018, there were none at that time. So this frequency, but what does it do? It's charging our electromagnetic energy field of the planet. And how many people feel that? I can see a show of hands. The other astrologers, do you feel that? Or is anybody else having sleep disorders? I don't even call it sleep disorders anymore. I just call it awake most of the night. But it's, for me, I have an office right next to my house. And if I wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I'm wide awake, I just get up and start my day. I try to fight that and go back to sleep. But as a self-employed astrologer, I get to do that. But this is people, can you feel it in your legs? Get people's legs vibrating? I feel tingling in my body. I hear people getting tinnitus that they haven't ever had before. But this is a quickening of the energy field, right? Wasn't that what we want? Aren't we all trying to rise up to higher quickened energy? I do believe so. And as we look at astrology for what's going on here in Olympia, we have all this grouping of planets. We've got the moon in Scorpio on the opposite side. And, interesting, the moon in Scorpio is opposite Uranus. Some say Uranus, some say Uranus. People squirm if I talk about their Uranus. So you use your own comfort zone on that one. But moon opposite Uranus, at the higher level, the outer planets, if you're interested in consciousness growth, that's where the juice is. If you're a person that just wants to stay skin encapsulated, ego encapsulated in your view, you want to be in control of everything, you don't like outer planets or their transits because we're dealing with things transpersonal, beyond our ability to control. But Uranus at the higher level is the voice of evolution, the liberator, the awakener. This Uranus opposite moon, how many of us would like to be able to liberate ourselves from some old emotional habit patterns? Like all of us, right? I mean, that's what we'll be talking about tonight, because we're going to talk about this real positive astrology. I want to mention a few things. Pluto, all of you astrologers know, has moved into Aquarius. If some of you aren't into astrology that much, since 2008 up until just this year, Pluto had been in Capricorn. It has a 250-year orbit, so it sets the entire stage. Everything happens within Pluto orbit. It's all within that in our solar system. In Capricorn, 2008, what happened? The financial meltdown. Housing crisis, except not for banks. They got bailed out. And that started the corporate era. I call this Pluto and Capricorn, the corporate era, in earnest, where in 2010, the Supreme Court gave the corporations the rights of individuals so they could give as much money to any candidate or election that they choose. That the guise of freedom for speech. That kind of skews, that much money in an election skews things. But we've even got this conservative courts pulling back, the Supreme Court pulling back on women's rights. It's not you women that get to choose, it's a Supreme Court. Well, even old guy presidents. I'm kind of amazed. Pluto moved into Aquarius. I thought, wouldn't we have a younger president? Aquarius is youth in the future. And Capricorn is the age and the past and status quo. And our candidates, the main candidates that we have, are still of that past model. But the last time that this happened, 250 years ago, 1787 to 1797, that's the American Revolution and the French Revolution. For freedom, Aquarius. Independence from what? The monarchies. We don't want to be controlled by monarchies. Well, we don't have monarchies now, but we have corporations. I think this is the freedom that the revolution against the corporations having all the money, control, power. And I don't think that the corporations are all of a sudden going to give their money and their wealth to the humanitarian organizations, Aquarius at the higher level, altruism, humanitarian, these drives. Yeah. But this diversity, science, of course, we're seeing technology like never before. AI, are you other astrologers using AI at all? And there's so many fields, it's all of a sudden going to become a big thing. When I was a young hippie, we were singing about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, but we didn't have computers. So we thought about it as going to be something different. But right now, things are very chaotic on our planet. But when they're chaotic, it's malleable. When things are stable, it's hard to change. But right now, doesn't the world feel like it's in flux? The solar flares, the politics, the environment, the climate, the wars. Yeah. This is the exciting one. And isn't it true, astrologers? It's not been easy the last several years being an astrologer, preparing people for one grim aspect after another. Well, just in April, we had Jupiter, Uranus conjunct. And this is the first positive astrology, the outer planets, in quite a while, years. And, if you go back through history, they come together every 14 years. But essentially, you'll see a who's who of inventions, starting from technology, the first telegraph, the first hot air balloon ride where somebody left the planet in the hot air balloon ride, first space flight, landing on the moon. computers. Culturally, it was Woodstock and that liberation. Music is unbelievable. Joni Mitchell launched her career. Jupiter Uranus. The Beatles, Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, on and on and on. Launch, launch, launch. How many of you are ready to launch something? And then Jupiter moved into Gemini. It's in harmony to Pluto. We have this trine, that lovely trine. Trine means flowing support. So they mutually are supporting each other. Jupiter is supporting this Aquarius agenda. And well, Aquarius is Pluto is supporting that Jupiter crest in Gemini. It's this workshop. It's this retreat. Get together, share information. If it's technology, we're doing Zoom, great. We get together, we jam, we share ideas. And this is the first positive astrology we've had. But how many of us hear this talk of a new wind blowing and we're ready to spread our wings? Yeah, I want to spread my wings and fly with this. But something keeps us grounded. Okay, I'm ready. I got my wings out. I'm flapping, but I'm still sitting in my chair. Well, we are grounded by our old habits, our old patterns. Just as we've been so conditioned, even those who don't think they've been allegiant to the patriarchal, well, we have been, even when we were young kids and you're told your parents, I don't feel like going to school today. What'd you hear? You must. It's like, okay, here we go. The imposition of that. So 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, it said. That's how many thoughts we can think a day. 60 to 70,000 thoughts. You Geminis probably double that. I don't know. But 95% of them are repetitive. It's just the same thought, the same thought. In consciousness circles, they call it firing is wiring. So that neurons in our brain and consciousness that fire together, they wire together. And then they form neural patterns, neural networks. And if you have the same thoughts, which invokes the same emotions, which invokes the same feelings in the body, and that invokes more of the same thoughts, feeling, that same feeling, thought loop that just we get stuck in, well, it could be the same life. So let's talk about how we can make some of these shifts. Now, Saturn has moved into Pisces. That's not a strong place for it in worldly sense. Saturn seeks to organize, manage, take control, build something here. How do you organize water? You're in Pisces. How do you organize? Let's build some structure here. Let's get this part of the water. It's not happening. And Pisces is a water sign. And many of us, we love this lifting, but Saturn in Pisces is kind of sad. It's heavy emotion. It can be melancholic. Pisces is the ocean of collective emotion. So we're not just feeling my emotions, I'm feeling the emotions of the world. And with Pisces, get pulled into, how many of us feel suffering in the planet? You might be having a great day yourself, but you feel empathy for those dying and caught up in war or the animals in nature. I mean, isn't that Saturn and Pisces? We're getting gripped by, When I progressed moon through Pisces, I developed a technique. I call it feel it, bless it, release it. Because it's helpful. I think it's helpful to know about the pain and suffering that's out there, but it's not helpful to carry it. It's not helpful to carry it, right? Because that pulls us down into that. I crudely say 2 drowning people aren't better than 1. So feel it down my gut in the lower levels and then pull it up into my heart and have some compassion for the needless suffering that's there. And then release it with a bit of a prayer. And you'll pull out of it. If you do that in earnest, you'll pull out of it. The promise of Saturn is always realized by following the same boring words: self-control, self-restraint, self-discipline. If you're self-controlled, self-restrained, self-disciplined, where Saturn is, you're going to be doing fine. In Pisces, the promise is that if you're more disciplined with your spiritual practice, it will deepen and mature. What is your spiritual practice? There's many different practices as are each of us here right now. I like to sit down and meditate formally, do my yoga and meditate. But walking in the garden, just walking in nature. My wife goes out in nature and communes, not just witnesses nature, but you can see her interacting with the trees and the flora and fauna. And that gets her up into that spiritual place. Every sign has its high road. Pisces, compassion. It's our spirituality, our sense of unity, oneness. Does Pisces have any low roads? Yeah. And I think with Pisces, all of us, it's good to put up a few roadblocks about types of behavior that's just not healthy. Well, Pisces, shame, guilt, woe is me, self-pity. Those, I have Sun in the 12th house. I don't have much Pisces, but I've noticed anytime I get into self-pity, like any 12th house person can, I can go and feel bad and get in my self-pity. I wouldn't want anybody to come in and pity me. That would be, no, it's not what I want. And I realized eventually no good has come from that for me or from anybody. Just learn, But I found that shame and guilt, I'd like to say, have a healthy 24-hour shelf life. After that, they turn toxic. If I feel guilty this morning about how I treated my wife last night, and that sting, I treat her better today, well, that was probably a good moral slap from my own higher self. But if you carry that past 24 hours, it turns bad like bad yogurt in the kitchen. Been there too long. So Neptune, 29 degrees, 53 minutes. It is at the very end degree of Pisces. What do you think, astrologers? Does it wimp out and say, I'm almost an Aries? Or does it come on stronger? And Pisces, that's what astrologers know. When something's at its last degree, call its anoretic degree, not anorexic, it's not an eating disorder. But it's as strong as it's called its degree of fate. And Pisces, Neptune in Pisces. So we are at this point where we have Neptune and Saturn coming close together this year and moving into its strongest point. Now, Pisces, the fabled third eye, artists and spiritual seekers, they're just getting the mojo, right? Because they're aiming that imagination towards that which inspires. But Neptune's also escapism, drugs, alcohol, pornography, illusions, deception, deceit. That's what I say with Neptune, that you have to tune. Our spiritual antenna has gone further out into the collective than ever before. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do you want to hear what the collective's thinking? Well, maybe if you're listening to a Rumi poem or what, but if it's AM static radio or something. So you have to figure out how to tune that intention in every day. I think with learning something about, we talk about the Pisces energy, something about meditation, whether it be walking in nature, so many different ways. When I was a baseball coach for my kids when they were young'uns, the other coaches knew I was into yoga and meditation. They just give me grief about it. Like, I ain't into that sissy stuff. And then I'd see them later the same day fishing in the stream. And, oh yeah, they're into it. That would get them right there. Just, they weren't thinking about daily stuff. They were in that groove. So frequency is everything. Frequency is everything. If we're talking about this lifted high and expanded energy, but if we're pulled down, we're not going to tune in. I like to use David Hawkins' work with power versus force. He was one of the pioneers of kinesiology, muscle testing. And he came up with this scale. I can't verify the numbers, but I can verify the energetic feeling. And it just rates different levels of consciousness that we run throughout the day. If you're in shame, that's 20. If you're enlightened, that's 1,000. And there's the scale. The teaching is that everything below 200 is lower frequency energy. It's unhealthy, it leads to unhealth, it doesn't lead to well-being. So we got guilt, apathy. Grief is sometimes the appropriate energy, but it's low. Fear, oh yeah. Desire, well, he rates that at 125. I have Venus and Scorpio. I would have rated it much higher. But he looks at it as kind of a low energy. Anger, 150. Well, I got my energy cooking now, but it's still negative. Everything I touch has got that energy with it. Pride, kind of, I did it all myself. And then courage. Everything above 200 is, everything above courage is empowering. It's positive energy. It's health generating. It's openness. And courage. Did it take any courage for you, Maria, to do this weekend, this retreat? Didn't it take courage? Why don't you stay home and not do that? Didn't you go through nervousness? Did it take courage? Of course it does. Katie, did it take courage to get up, willing to come out here today? Well, every parents, work, so many times, it's just courage that pulls us up. Then he gets into neutrality, willingness, and the same activity with different states of energy. I've talked my wife into letting me wash the dishes in the morning. It wasn't hard to talk her into it. But my point is that I wanted to be with her in the evening. She's Virgo. She could spend hours getting that kitchen tuned up. But I like to sit with my sweetie. So I get up in the morning when I make my coffee, I do the dishes. And what if I did it from a state of anger, irritation, frustration? What's that feel like? I gotta do these dishes. Who left these dishes? Or just acceptance or willingness. What's the difference? Just glad to have it. Glad that I got to sit with my wife last night. Same activity, but energetically, isn't it different? Glad to have dishes. These are exponentially more powerful. So when you get up to love at 500, it's not just 300 points, it's hundreds times more powerful than fear and anger. And we all know this when we're getting into our heart places. That's, but David Hawkins, and then joy and peace and enlightenment. I don't know, enlightenment might be a high standard for most of us. Like one of my favorite sayings is enlightened today, asshole tomorrow. I mean, it doesn't seem to stick. We can get such great illumination, and then all of a sudden be such a jerk again. Well, I speak for myself. But anyway, I'm sure others have gone through that. So I had my wife make, Lori's got beautiful script handwriting. I had her make me this chart right here on the back of a card I can keep on my desk. And
do you want to unmute yours? I mean, do you want to unshare so we can see it?
So this is just a 5x9 card or 5x8 card. And then she just put them there and I can keep it right on my desk. And his teaching is when you find yourself in these lower places, energy places, let it go. That's the name of his book. Let it go. Let it go. And it sounds too simple, but let it go and return. Let it go and return. So I see, oh, I'm stuck in that. I'm that my fear, anxiety, guilt. Well, isn't it, it's easy enough when things are going reasonably well in your life. To me, this is the coolest tool I've found. I use every tool I can to kind of get out of my lower places and get up into our higher places like we all do. But this is just quick. Fine when everything's going well in your life and you're just dealing with normal monkey muck mind. But how about when you're stuck? When you get in an energy cycle, you just got a breakup or you got fired or just, it's not easy just to, let go of it and turn. No. Then you got to do the work. You got to do the work. When you're in the jar and you're stuck in one of these energy cycles, you can't read the label. That's a cute little awareness, but it's just if you're in the jar and you're in these cycles, you have to be able to see that you're in it. As soon as you're not in the jar if you're aware that you're in the jar. The only time you're stuck in the jar or in these old, the feeling, it triggers thoughts or frequency. We talk about thoughts, frequency, everything's frequency. Thoughts carry frequency. They trigger neurotransmitters that trigger release of chemicals into the body, cortisol, running stress, and oxytocin when we're running the live. And this, it's how to make that change. We went up to a birthday party for my 90-year-old friend up in Canada last week. It's her 90th birthday, and she just wrote her first book. It was a release of her first book. Gives me inspiration. But her book is who knew? But it's basically the teaching of inside out as opposed to outside in, which is what metaphysics is really all about. If I'm going to be happy and joyful, if I get the raise, if it's sunny and warm, if my wife is nice, well, that's conditional. That's outside in. But learning how to get there inside out. Because when we make changes in our mind, if it doesn't get into the body, the felt sense, it doesn't really do anything. That same old cycle, the memory. David White, the poet, he says it rather poetically, just a few lines. You have to stop the conversation you are having with yourself. Stop the story. He says to drink from a deeper well. Isn't that beautiful? Stop the story, to drink from a deeper well. But then that throws us right in face. If I stop the story, it would get face to face with the unknown. The unknown, what is the unknown for most people is scary. It triggers the amygdala. The amygdala, fight or fright, fight or fight, or fright. So we have to, he says, eventually we have to learn to make friends with the unknown. I suppose that's what the great Tao is about. You can't really know, but you can know. Learning how to make friends with the unknown. And he has a line that I love. I'll just pass it on. He encourages us to cultivate robust vulnerability. There's two words that don't always go together, right? I think Brené Brown's work on vulnerability on the TED Talk is just brilliant because, again, we've been taught to protect ourselves from vulnerable. But if you want to be penetrated by life, you have to be vulnerable. If I'm all guarded up and armored up, I miss the magic. I miss the flow. Robust vulnerability. When we talk about our, getting up into that heart, attitude of gratitude is really one of the quickest ways out of the hell zones or the negative zones, just because that changes things. We get into that attitude of gratitude, and gratitude has a whole different kind of energy because it releases oxytocin, which then triggers the release of nitrous oxide, which then swells the arteries going to the heart. Whoa. Then what kind of feeling energy are we running? Heart Math is another group I was interested in their work, Heart Math. And they talk about heart breathing. What does that mean, heart breathing? It's picturing somebody that you love when you're in a negative place, or a dog or a cat, or maybe even chocolate ice cream, I don't know. But then breathe in and out as if you're breathing in and out love from the heart. This creates coherence. the mind-brain coherence and an openness that when the brain is dominant, it's just not the same. I remember when I was in grade school, I was always been a movie fan. I love stories. So I get TV Guide. Anybody remember those TV guides? I get it on Sunday and look through the TV guide and see which interesting movies were on and which day. Those are the days I had a stomach ache. Oh, I can't go to school today. I got a stomach ache. I'll watch a movie. And I'd stay home and watch movies. Still do. But I remember this one cowboy and Indian movie back then. It was a Western. And the cowboys had won, and they're coming in and moving into the territory previously occupied by the Native Americans. And they're sitting, the chief and the cowboy, big dude, are sitting talking to each other. Cowboy said, well, how do you think we're going to do here? Do you think we'll be able to be okay? Us white people here coming in. The chief says, and the captain said, well, no, why? He says, you still think from here. That was such a mystery to me at 10. Where else do you think from? What do you mean think from here? Where else do I think from? But this heart math is teaching that concept of heart breathing. The redemptive power of forgiveness to keep an open heart can't be overstated. If we want to move forward, we want to get out of the past. I call it forgiveness work. I'm sure you know what I mean. If I forgive my wife after we had a spat and we're trying to get back in each other's good graces, I know it's not enough until I've done the work, right? And what's the work? Being willing to ask, well, what was my role in that problem? How could I have handled that in a better way? I mean, that's when the armor comes down. Otherwise, we're in that isolation instead of intimacy, which is what we crave. How about self-forgiveness? How's that going for people? Is that important to keep an open heart? Do you find that it's harder to forgive self than it is to forgive other people? Most of us do. I do. I think I have that notion of high enough being I can forgive her. But how about me? I can't forgive myself. Until I learned something about meditation, I didn't get it. I couldn't look in a mirror and just forgive myself. It never worked. But if I can get up into my higher self, I can forgive my lower self, my human self, my mortal self, my David self, my fucked up self. And then I find that kind of forgiveness is probably more like a mother forgiving a child. It's probably more like acceptance. I'm feeling it's more like acceptance of, well, so I've grown to believe that acceptance is the higher octave of forgiveness. It's the stuff we've learned from. It's who's made us who we are. I was going to mention some of the steps that we can do to liberate forgiveness. Ho'onoponopono. Do you know this practice? When we lived in Hawaii, we learned the Ho'onoponopono forgiveness prayer. It's just 4 lines, and it's not for face-to-face work. It's for when you're separate from someone and they're not talking to you, and they're not going to answer the phone. And what do you do? I'll just give you the 4 lines. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And you picture, I say it different sequence, the same 4 lines. I start with, I love you, just to reach out heart first. Somebody I'm separate from, no chance of talking. Picture, I love you. I'm sorry. Not I'm sorry about I did A, B, or C. I'm just sorry that we're separated. I'm just sorry we're in this state of separation. Please forgive me. And again, not please forgive me for when I said this, that, or the other, just for whatever it is that I've done that's contributed to this. And then thank you is the acceptance of it. So how many of us get in old stories that just kind of loop around? We're in that jar, so to speak. And the French painter Pulses On says that genius is the ability to bring fresh emotion to every day. Isn't that, it's poignant. Fresh emotion. Well, no, this triggers a memory, and then that brings it, not fresh emotion, it's the same emotion. Same way I felt 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But how to bring that fresh emotion. So here's a few steps we could mention. Recognize and accept where you are. I think a person has to be able to sit with themselves without media, without their iPhone. Just sit. If we can't be at ease with ourselves, we can't be at ease with other people. But the first step is just recognize and accept where you are. Just sit and watch. Another tip, let go of any type of victim consciousness. So if you're going to do it, choose to do it. Not I have to do it, I choose to do it. I have to wash the dishes. Or I choose to wash the dishes. I got to be with my sweetie. It's a difference. Let go of victim consciousness, and then constant gratitude. Gratitude is also, it sends out, you get a heart on. You get your heart cooking. And that's a great attractor. That's what opens life up. Yeah. Constant gratitude, just remembering that nothing quite like it. Set your intentions in present time. Now, here's an example. Many of you have learned loving kindness prayer or affirmation. And again, it's 4 lines, but it's like when last few years when things were so harsh in the world, the news was just so harsh, and the great American divide, everybody's angry at everybody. My heart was sore, so I practiced the loving kindness meditation. It starts as an affirmation. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer danger. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. But if you set things in current time, isn't that asking for something as if we don't have it? So I'm changing that affirmation to a statement of, I am filled with loving kindness. I am safe from inner and outer dangers. I am healthy in body and mind. I am at ease and happy. It's funny, but of those, the hardest thing for me to get to was ease. I think I need to put it up at the top of the list. I'm a fiery guy. Ease sounded like maybe too mellow, like a cow or something. Maybe I'm just going to sit around. But so I'm working at being at ease and happy. Another thing we can do, leave everybody energetically better than you found them. There's not a worthy intention just to hang with this person. Did you help them in their day, or did you just ignore them? But leave everybody you interact with. Live with intention of ripple effect. That's, again, a meditation concept that if any good comes from this, may it have a ripple effect out into the world. If any good comes from our Harmonizing the Cosmos Healing Retreat, may it have a ripple effect and spread out in the world. May it have a ripple effect. See it, feel it, be it. Again, just picturing it isn't enough. You have to be able to feel it. One of the, setting goals, one of the secrets of setting goals, I'm gonna do this. Imagine how you'll feel at the completion of your goal. Then make that feeling current. Live from that as if, instead of once that happens. Let go of outcome. I think most of us probably have had to work with that. You know, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. Is it going to work out the way you wanted? Maybe yes, maybe no. Sometimes yes. I think the Bhagavad Gita says the same thing of just, live with right intentions, but let go of outcome. There's just time and patience. Inside out, milk the beautiful. Linger in delightful moments. Merge with nature rather than see it. Choose Pam Gregory, another great astrologer. I'm sure many of you listen to her. She gets up in the morning and her first affirmation is, I choose to live and love and joy today. Isn't that marvelous? Just a simple, this notion of how we start our day. Imagine a great musician has got a concert. Yo-Yo Ma is playing in Seattle. He just flew in from London in our make-believe story. But the plane was a little bit late and traffic was bad. So he gets to the concert hall and people are already in the audience waiting for his performance. Do you think he'd take the time to tune his instrument, or would he rush out impatiently and start squeaking away because they're impatient, they want me now? Or would you take the time to tune the instrument? And we've got all of these dormant spiritual faculties we learn about in astrology, the outer planets, meditative states, and higher levels of consciousness. But you got to give them room. They stay dormant if we don't ever get out of the lower chakras, if we're just grinding away on this other stuff. It's hard to have hope and optimism about the nature of our world, but I think all of us do, why we do what we do. I think we can become, I'll say, the yeast that helps activate the dough. It rises all of it. We get up into our higher self. We become that yeast and we stimulate the growth. Right? I'll just share one more. This comes from my wife. She starts her day in some of her walks. It's a cute little sing song, but darned if it doesn't work. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is swell. Feel so good. I feel so well. Every little cell in my body is well. So, my friends, that's about my story. Do you have questions? Or it's 6 o'clock? Is that about
Oh my
time?
goodness. Yes, yes, yes. This is perfect, David. Oh my goodness. I loved your presentation. I didn't know you could sing though. I love it. Let's open it up. Does anyone have questions for David? Oh my goodness, David. So I'll ask you one, with the state of affairs the way they are, it seems as though each of us can do what we can to keep our vibration high, so that we're not, I guess, bowled over by what is going on in the world.
The teaching that Hawkins passes on, I can't verify this, but he says that 85% of the world's population never gets into these higher energy states at all.
That is amazing.
They spend our whole day in anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame. I mean, this is not that group, but we can't wait for the world to be at peace. Again, that's conditional joy for us to be at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And we do this Aquarius. We're moving into times. This Jupiter into Gemini this year is a precursor to Uranus moving into Gemini next year.
Oh, that's right.
And then Saturn and Pisces moves into Aries. Neptune and Pisces moves into Aries. We're moving from earth and water where we've been, to fire and air. And they're going to be supportive. And the outer planets supportive. Maybe the great American divide will finally be healed. You know, maybe they'll finally see some cooperation when outer planets are all supporting one another. But the pace is going to quicken. But I think we'll be, you know, I'm concerned for the world. I'm concerned for critters in nature. It saddens me greatly to hear things like, since I was 20 till now, that's 55 years, something like 70 or 75% of the species of animals aren't here that were when I was 20. And that's on our watch, us hippies, us peaceniks, that what? I mean, yeah, I got to own some of this. But again, humans, they're pretty fierce species. And the more that we can change that to 16, 17, 18, 20, 25% of people spending most of their time up in these higher energy states, then I think we can see true change happening in the world. But it starts like what you're saying, Maria, is one person at a time, and that one person got to be you and me, right?
And so getting yourself up into those higher frequencies, it doesn't mean that you have to stay there all the time, but actually being there as much as you can seems to be the optimal.
Well said, Marie. Well said. Because it's, you know, somebody just walking around in joy and peace. We wonder what drugs they're on. I mean, we want some of it. No, and we're, you know, our lives are up and down. But the nice thing is that I found from meditation that good days, bad days, shitty days, wonderful days, anxious days, that state of peace that you get in meditation is always there.
Sure
I'm not always there, but it's always there, and it's accessible, and we can access that more and more. And then we start changing the neural networks. Studies have shown that the amygdala actually shrinks in size for people who are meditating and spending more time. And again, just being aware throughout the day. How many times do we go unconscious and dip down into those lower states? It's the awareness that does the work.
So does meditation itself, what frequency or frequency range is meditation? Do you know?
Well, it's right. It's love, joy, peace, with precious few, or in my case, no moments of enlightenment. Just, you know, yeah. A great line in a Tibetan poem I use as a monitor of my progress with meditation. So when I finally get there, it's rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind that lays battered by karma and neurotic thoughts.
I love
and
it.
I think
that's perfect, David. Absolutely perfect. Thank you for presenting this evening. This is fantastic. All right. Well, everybody, we are moving on to our last presentation for the evening. And it gives me, you know, great pleasure to have my good friend Katie Kay here. And so Katie has over 30 years studying astrology, tarot, ancient and modern philosophies. Katie Kay brings her intuitive guidance now as a spiritual coach using astrology to start the conversation. Katie's been practicing astrology in Seattle, starting with reading tarot at Astrology et al., which was the bookstore owned by Maggie Nalbandian. Maggie Nalbandian was the founder of Kepler College. It was her wish and dream and to create Kepler, and she did a fantastic job doing that. And she is certified as an astrologer by the Washington State Astrological Association and has been reading tarot at NORWAC, which is the Northwest Astrological Conference, for many years. She brings tools from her ongoing spiritual studies from archaeological carvings, her metacism, world religions, and relationship patterns to her coaching sessions. Katie is a certified coach, has a degree in psychology, is a member of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, and has participated in the Washington State chapter of the International Federation of Life Coaches, actually. And Katie's talk tonight is Energizing Astrology's Spiritual Tools. Many will recognize some basic spiritual principles: oneness, a centeredness of peace, eternal creative energy, and infinite individuation. As spiritual beings having a human existence, however, these ideas seem to conflict with daily life: impermanence, conflict, cycles, doubt, and struggle. What if we could see both of these as the same thing? If we could consciously shift our points of view using our astrology charts? What if, with the use of the cosmic information, our cycles of up and down could be less disturbing? From specific aspects in the chart, we will see the energies of planets that may have helped us survive that end up being unreliable. Upon closer look, with a wider acceptance of these energies, we can reformat them for better use. As we review examples, we can also note the infinite spiritual principles encased in the transformation from fear to faith, stuck to freedom, old patterns to adventures. Taoism, Buddhism, so-called primitive beliefs, as well as Judeo-Christian, Islamic, and Hindu religions systems have original ideas to speak to the cosmic intelligence we see in our charts. Free will is the ingredient of all transformation. We are not confined to old stories in our charts. We can use ancient spiritual wisdom to manifest our heart's desire. So let's just do it. Welcome, Katie.
Hi. Wow, I didn't know you were going to read all that. That was fun. Like David said, there's my presentation. You got it right there.
I got it right there.
Got it right
Okay.
there.
Can go home
Okay.
early.
Oh yeah, we'll go home early. Well, thanks so much for everyone who's here, and thanks so much for everybody who's watching. Anyways, hi everybody. I'm Katie Kay. I'm a spiritual coach, not a tech genius. I'm a spiritual coach. I use astrology and tarot to start the conversation, usually astrology when I work with my clients. I'm a coach because I want to take you someplace. I really like the word coach because I love football. You know, Pete Carroll from the sides going, come on, you can do it. You're on the field. I'm not field, but I'm watching and I have some experience being in those positions. Okay, so astrology and spiritual viewpoints, spiritual principles are very similar. They're from observable patterns. You can see that in astrological energies. And these can be seen as spiritual tools that we can actually use by looking at our astrology aspects and energies. It goes back and forth. That's what this is supposed to show. And here's another one. One of the systems I've studied a lot, and it's an endless study, so it means I know this much, is the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is a lot like astrology because, first of all, it's natural. It's an ancient oral tradition of how. Can you see my cursor when I go like this? Yes? Okay, good. It's how we came from heaven and we went through all these awarenesses and we got to earth. And actually, this is how we get back to that so-called higher vibration level that David was talking about. Now, the tree actually is upside down in some studies. So we start from the roots and we go this way and that way. It's really like a DNA spiral, in my opinion. Okay, that's a spiritual model that we can also see in astrology. Another one, all-time favorite, the Mobius strip. I speak to some groups and they don't know what a Mobius strip is. I show them. It just always blows my mind. This design has only one side. If you haven't done this, you take a strip of paper, you twist it, you tape it together. That strip only has one side. Now that's supposed to be how the universe is. And I like it because it's 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 a it's an inside out paradoxical spiral. That's a lot of what astrology is. That's a lot about what universe is. And it's certainly a lot about what the spiritual journey is. David talked about the great unknown. Somehow you did. I know you did. And that's one of the ways that the divine was, all that is described, great unknown, the mystery. And so this reminds me of that mystery. Another one, oh, it's behind you guys. Let me yeah. This is the tarot, the cup. It's the Ace of Cups, Ace of Hearts. What I like about this is a spiritual principle that also is alignable to astrology. What would it be? It'd be like it'd be like cancer overflowing, right? Cancer. And the idea is our cup overflows when we fill it. And the reason why we're here is to share it, to overflow, to overflow. And one of the things I'd like to say, the lotus is a symbol of enlightenment. It is necessarily at the bottom of the pond, rooted in slime, which current to what will be one of my first publications. Scatological spirituality makes really good fertilizer, and that's a technical term. So it's fertilizer, and that's what at the bottom of that pond. And I talk about that a lot when there's somebody with a lot of Pluto or Scorpio aspects. You are rototilling. You are rototilling dead ends and old things. It's rich. Okay. Let's see. And then we go on. Oh, I love my life. Come on. Now, of course, it won't go. There it is. The circle is a symbol of spirit. In the center, there is no movement for a wheel. It's called rota or Torah, right? And as David was talking a lot about meditation, when we were still and we watch the outside world go around us, that is a spiritual practice. Okay, however you do that. And so there are so many spiritual stories and images in astrology. I'd also like to say about the yin yang. I lost my cursor. The yin yang symbol, I'm going to be referring to that a lot because night and day define each other, harmonize each other. They don't eclipse each other. Day doesn't take over night. Night doesn't take over day. They just slide into each other. When does something go hot? When does something get cold? When is something bright? It's a yin yang kind of rolling along. You'll hear me talk about surfing and waves, which I think is a really important way to spiritually look at the world and is clearly like astrology because we have these cycles. Let's see. And I want to say something about the cross. It's an ancient symbol, and the vertical line is a paradigm and a story from heaven to earth, just like the tree. And then horizontal line is a story and a reference to the material world. The cross talks about the fact that we are on earth in the middle, both spiritual and human. And the Christ event, I think, really good idea to bring that to our attention, because he was also one of those people who said, hey, you're both. You are both. So let's take it from there. All right. So continuous creation is definitely part of most every spiritual system, because most spiritual systems starts from watching nature. Taoism is one of the ones I've studied the most does that. Simplicity, water, just watch nature. And for instance, in this picture of all these gardening tools, as we create life, we're life artists. We use fire, earth, air, and water to create our life, to manifest. Every one of those tools, you can align with one of those elements and one of the planets or the zodiac in astrology. And if I don't touch it too hard, for instance, let's see, I was thinking the basket would be Cancer, carrying people's feelings. Okay. Anybody can pipe up if they see something. What was I looking at the other time? The fence, that's a Saturn kind of thing. We're making a boundary, you know. So much of our life is like building a garden and manifesting. And I like to use that storyline when I'm working with people, and I talk about charts, and I talk about their chart, and I talk about how we can go from energizing. For instance, we got all this Scorpio in this chart down here. I think I show this again later. This person is pretty intense, okay? And it's directly square this Aquarian moon. Okay, so there is a strong all or nothing going on. But there's an inspiration, there's a shamanistic kind of transformation. And when this person has been learning about throwing herself into the passion, she gets out from the other side and she's different. And that's something that I've seen worked with people, especially with that Taurus, with that Scorpio. This is just another illustration. The circle on the right-hand side and the bottom is the Wicca or the pagan illustration of the seasons. Now, that's the creative, that's the creation, the cycle, the seasons, that's all astrology. And that's really all aligning with different seasons in spiritual philosophies. Spring, rebirth, Easter. Summer is growth. In the fall is harvest, celebrating what we have. And in the winter is rest. It's a big part of the I Ching cycles and the seasons, and also in the Wicca tradition. Okay, we're going to go through this fast because I know you guys all know this, but it's such a good core recognition of how the elements, which are in astrology, can be used in a way to reformat what might be the shadow and the strength side of any aspect and planet. Okay, I use this a lot. Somebody has a lot of fire, they're purposeful, they're passionate. However, and here's the thing that works a lot for me when I do coaching, and everybody talked about this a little bit. When it's out of balance, when fear and insecurity come up, that fire wants to be risky and assertive and proud and pushy. So as a mechanism to harmonize, remember that yin yang,
harmonize, why don't we go to water? Why don't we bring a little water, make it steamy rather than volcanic? That's one of the things I'll show in a little bit. But because when out of balance, it can be aggressive and risky and burn the house down. Air, thinking, socializing, communicating, networking. And if that's out of balance, I can be try to do two things at once. I have Gemini rising, or I can't do two things at once, which is seem to be happening tonight, but that's okay. So when I'm insecure, when air is insecure, it can use all those talents of the word awkwardly. Earth, spring, sensuality, and loyalty building. When it's out of balance, there can be a landslide. Look at those rocks, burying everything. And that turns into a desire to control. I was talking to somebody today with some Capricorn. I said, if you're trying to control, you're in fear. And so this is how, being compassionate, that spiritual compassion, self-compassion David was talking about, helps to relax this idea of control because it doesn't work. Okay. And okay, we'll see how this goes. Water is feelings, emotions. And if you are out of balance with that, it can be manipulative and confused. Now, so using the yin yang tool, let me show you how this kind of elemental conversation, I'd like to say, worked for me. Here we have an Aries moon. Okay. And here is the Cancer sun. Nice little cluster stellium down there. This is 3 degrees square, moon to sun. Moon to sun, square. There's an argument going on. I want to take care of people, says the Cancer sun. I want to kill people, says the Aries moon. I don't like it. I'm out of here. I don't like this. Now, when starting with this person, there's an argument. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But what we work through writing about them, and one of the suggestions is how do they appreciate each other, these energies? And so the Cancer sun, this big mom, this big, I want to help everybody, the big sister, really appreciates how the Aries moon can emotionally go places where nobody else will go. Inspiring. And that warrior Aries moon really appreciated how that Cancer mom was always giving no matter what. Those elements put together, that's harmony, that's yin yang. They might not agree all the time, but one of the things to bring in that compassion, and we'll talk about a point of view, is, they speak one at a time, no crosstalk. I do that a lot with square energies. Write them down, take dictation, no crosstalk, because they want to be heard. Usually with the square, there's so much noise and argument that neither one of those little kids of us, and I believe that happened at 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old, yeah, weren't heard. So there was no one heard. So that's one of the examples of taking earth, air, fire, and water and getting a story so that they harmonize rather than fight. Okay. And let's try another one. Let's see, we go. Okay. Now it's how they move. They move. I wasn't sure if we'd have new to astrology people here, so you guys all know this. Cardinal, outgoing, is a waterfall, but when that goes out of whack, it's that Aries, me first, get out of my way. Okay, we know about that. Fixed, stubborn, persistent, rooted, steady, focused, and controlling, and my way or the highway. Okay. Mutable, changeable, evolving, easygoing. One of the things that came up to me when it was just today too, is that cardinal is the right-hand side of the Kabbalah tree. It's flow. Spirit is flow. The left-hand side is fixed, it's form. Spirit needs a form to be seen in the world, but sometimes they get too tight. Sometimes they're not appropriate, square peg, round hole. But in the middle branch is harmony, is the mutability, it's the acceptance, it's the compassion of the heart, the Christ event, the Tiferet, the beautiful loving kindness. So that's another way to show how spirituality comes into those three modes. Okay. Thank you. And here we go. Yes. Okay. So here are some spiritual principles that everybody's already talked about. Oneness in diversity. We all have different faces of the same something in the background. Compassion, acceptance, recreation continuously. These are all things that we can see in astrology. And if we go back from the astrology picture into these, it can help transform what feels to be awkward aspects or transits. Now, another thing, I'm a spiritual coach. I don't talk about religion or gods, although I do collect them. So I got a collection. If you want to borrow some, that's fine. But fear can be seen as false evidence is appearing real. But it's also just the little kid of us that got scared viscerally in our body, didn't have the words to know what's going on. This is something I see in the aspects, sort of like solar arc years. Faith is something like, I'm safe. I'm safe. I got this. I'm good. This is something that I find a lot of people they're precious. They were born precious. And I make them say that I'm precious. And then we hold hands and then we can move forward. So it's like gravity. Faith is like gravity. You can jump all you want. You're going to come back down. You can fly. You'll be coming back down. So some kind of faith statement helps with fear. Okay. So this is obvious. Natural principles in astrology are the same. It's repeatable. Polarity and rhythm is something I really love to see because one of the difficulties I think we have in our world today, David talked a lot about that stuff, is a belief that duality, good and bad, separate things. Most of the mystical origins of Judeo-Christian, Islam, Tao Te Ching, Hindu, starts with polarity, very much like the yin yang, very much like there's hot and cold, but they're connected at the top, these two columns in an archway. There's so many connections depending on your point of view. Okay, rhythm and vibration, all those beautiful vibrations. One of the channel entities, Abraham, I think, had a whole list the exact same way that you showed it, David. And it's and he even brought from depression to get to anger is a step up. And then from anger here, and you know what I mean, that we can take these baby steps to get out. It was really lovely. Impermanence is definitely, it's part of Buddhism. Everything is different, everything changes. And that's exactly like astrology. So here's an example I'd like to say about how to allow for seasonal waves and adjust the elements. This person has a lot of air, got, 5, right? 5 Libra, and then a couple Aquarius, and down here Saturn, which I think is retrograde in Gemini. And I love to watch these charts down here. Look at all that air. Not much water, not much earth, little tiny bit of fire. So anytime the transits will come up here, or, or cross or square of that, it could very well be that person gets in her head, hard to make decisions. I could be this, it could be that, could be that, could be this, it could be that, could be this, because it creates that conversation. And so when we talk, and as a client, I would say, okay, you got Mars going through Libra. You're going to get a lot of energy, but it might not be decision time. Another thing to do when all of that Libra is activated is to move to the opposite. Just do it. Just do something. Do that Nike thing. Just do something. Take an action forward. So that's another way how the polarity can help. Different viewpoints can help to balance it out, like that yin yang kind of thing. It's sort of like we yin yanging around, rolling around our life. Okay. So here's some real spiritual tools that I talk an awful lot about when I walk through people's charts and their transits as a client, to coach them again from a little bit of fear, stumbles, old beliefs in the way, bumps, barriers, however they show up, office, business, personal. Every barrier is an old belief fighting a new desire. It's my opinion, anyways. Okay. So here are some tools. Awareness. Again, David talked about that. You got to be aware. I love that. What did you say? You're in a jar and you don't know the label? That was hilarious. I love it. We all, when we, as coaches and clients and astrologers, we all notice people who don't recognize that they're stuck. Sometimes I can't help them. Oh, I'm fine. Okay, then. Okay, good. But then people who, for instance, I work a lot with people in recovery who are desperately, definitely addicts, who finally say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you see them come out and see themselves with choices. That's just like amazing. So when I work as a coach using astrology, I can say, and I use that objectivization, don't have the word, but I look at the chart and I say, you see all that Libra there? That would lend you to not be able to make a decision because you see both sides of the situation. But if you just make a decision and go a little bit towards a decision, you will find more information and that will help you move forward. Okay? Taking the superpower and helping that superpower go to the opposite. I got another one. I'll put it here because I want to mention it. The whole thing about forgiveness always gets me because I'm a codependent. So if I give forth, I'm being codependent again. It's just the word, but it gets to me. However, I look at the lesson of Virgo. Virgo is a very discerning element, energy. A lot of people I walk, I said, you probably see the typos in the menus in restaurants. I go, oh, I do, because they see it. They recognize edges. They see the difference when they're out of balance. It's compare and despair and analysis paralysis. So I say, okay, you got to pull back. You got to discern, not judge. And so when people think they have to forgive, I go, yeah, you have to find a way to move back. So remove the judgment. See this from a different point of view. You are discerning that that person acts different than you. You don't want to act like that person. That's okay. But you don't have to play with them. Discernment versus judgment has helped a lot. Awareness of your element. So when people know their own charts, I think it helps them be aware. Don't have to know the transits or anything, but the person who had all that Scorpio, she knows the Scorpio. She was born on Halloween. So, and the people around her know that too. So she honors that intensity and that she gets through it. Here's discernment rather than judgment. Pause. Pausing to me, any kind of meditation, any kind of stillness is going to the center of the circle. because in any wheel, there's no movement in the center. It's like the wheel of the wheel of life in the middle of the Torah, and then the wheel of life at the end, right? One of my things that I believe really helps a lot in working both with the pictures and the stories in astrology, as well as spirituality, is what I call snitting. Snits, small next indicated things. Take it really small. And you just sit and think and all of the overwhelming things. It's also sort of like I find people who have a lot of Capricorn, okay, or Saturn, get really uncomfortable in chaos and messes. Okay. And I go, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't control it. I go, okay, I want you to sit in the mess and not move. But just ask yourself, what's the smallest thing you could do and not move? And what's the next smallest thing? Can you move that piece of paper? Can you find a box? Can you get a phone number? Tiny, tiny, tiny. And you wait until tiny, tiny, tiny. And the magic of this, at least for me, is that I'll think of little tiny things and I still won't do them. And there'll be one little tiny thing. I go, well, I suppose I could do that. And I'm up moving. It's a real interesting kind of tool. Okay. I have Gemini rising, so I remember also a very strong spiritual book started with in the beginning was the word. We manifest with words. That's the first thing we do is we talk about it, we write about it, we plan it out, we do a blueprint. And so honoring our words is an important part of, I think, the air signs and any place there are air signs, or the Mercury retrograde that yeah, Lori just talked about. Lori, yeah, right. And and honoring the words are important because again, that's spiritual breath. Spirit is a word for breath. You know, we are filled with spirit every time we breathe. That's why deep breathing gives us that peace, because that's spirit coming in like this. Okay. So being honoring our words is important. I use a lot of writing exercises. Some people, like this morning, a lot of women don't recognize when they're angry, let alone being able to be angry. And I see the difficulty with the fire element in the chart. And so I say, okay, I want you to get in your journal. In the back of the journal, I want you to write a poison pen letter. And I want you to get out all that anger that you can't say to anybody and never could say to anybody. But in your journal, it's not to give to anybody. You don't need to rewrite it. It's like flushing the toilet. Okay. You got to do it. Food comes in, life comes in. Some you use, some you don't. Again, it's part of scatological spirituality. And it's just the way it is. Okay. When that is released, then we can get to a script that I work with people to say, you know, that just doesn't work for me. Or, no, thank you. Instead of really a forceful sense of feeling disrespected, maybe, or anger, or a trigger. See, the triggers are out here, but they're rooted inside here to something usually older that we're not even aware of. But when we honor that, then it feels honored, and we can move on to not yelling at the grocery clerk for a feeling of disrespect we might have gotten from our brother at the age of 4. These are the kind of things that I think that you can see starting in astrology, bring into spiritual conversation, and then use these tools to help re-energize the aspect in a new way. That's my endeavor anyways. Okay, here's an example of discernment versus judgment, a new point of view. This person has, and boy, the minute I see somebody born around the 60s, I don't know if you guys recognize this, but there's these guys went back and forth in Virgo, different times, different ways. I've seen it a lot, which adds to, I believe, stories of being criticized early in life, getting the impression that they had to do something right, i.e., perfect. And those messages get internalized. So because you see those discerning things, Virgo sees the difference between this and that. So you got to do it right. You got to do it right. Got to do it right. I tell people you're not allowed to say the word perfect anymore. You say excellent. You can't say perfect because there's no such thing, right? But the opposite of this goes all the way, and this person did have some Pisces. This, I believe, is a healing polarity, that when this criticism comes up, then we bring in compassion, and that's the self-compassion. I didn't do it right. That's okay. That's okay. Try it again. Okay. In the olden days, when women, when women would make quilts, they would purposely put a mistake in that quilt because only God was perfect. And I love that it allows, it's just a story of allowing us and being normal about this incredible idea of perfect. So this is a place where self-compassion can help ease this inner self-criticism, which I see a lot with people born in the mid 60s there. Okay. And it's a new point of view of value. Virgo, Venus, second house has a lot to do with personal value. So, anyways, I find them related. Okay. I love this. One of the biggest things that astrology can help us with, like I just described, and is important in most all of these spiritual systems that talk about, endless creativity and impermanence, is we see things from different point of view. Where we're born and our life experiences are different point of view. I think we all recognize that the natal chart is from supposedly the first breath, and it reflects like a blueprint of what we designed in this life. I say you and your higher self said, oh, let's try this and let's try this. Okay. Somebody born the next breath right next to that person can use the exact same aspects in a completely different way. Easy schmeezy. I've seen it. I've seen twins be completely different. Okay, so it's a spiritual perspective has to allow for the acceptance of different kinds, different points of view. Okay, now we come into some fun stuff. I hope the glass the glass half empty. The spiritual truth is it's refillable. It's refillable. You don't have to worry about if it's half empty or half. That's this incredible discernment turned judgment, right? Okay. Now the next slide, I hope you guys enjoy it because I love it so much. Gary Larson. Now this shows about the four elements and how different spiritual ways is. Water, top left. The glass is half full. Oh, nourishing, optimistic. To the right there, earth, aware of resources. There, the glass is half empty. Down on the left, the air, questioning. It's half full. No, it's half empty. No, wait, what was the question again? Is that like Gemini right there? And then my favorite, on the right, fire, clarity, self-concern. Hey, I ordered a cheeseburger. Hilarious. Different points of view, the same thing. And that's what I enjoy about working with people from the astrological chart, because all these are right. All these are right. But it depends on what you do with them, right? Okay. The bottom of all this, is fear as a trigger that makes superpower into conflict. I don't, fear is like a fulcrum on our lives, right? And if it's very razor edge, it's like this. We all know people who live in fear and nothing seems to work. Anxiety is constant. But if spiritual practice affects that fulcrum, then things don't, the highs and lows are not so bad. Life, I think, as described by most spiritual systems, is a series of waves. The Tao cultivators say if we get to know the tide, if we practice surfing, then the waves are not so big. Or, maybe they do knock us over, but we learn. And that's where I think that the spiritual perspective helps people with the transits and the ups and downs of all the aspects and the elements and the houses and the whole thing. I don't believe in balance. Since I recognize the Buddhist, everything's changed. I don't believe in balance, but I do believe in harmony. And that's why the yin yang symbol, I think, helps an awful lot because they're in harmony. They have their integrity. They're both there. There's an edge. I can be in one place or the other, or I can hold this thing up and go, there's both. Okay. The hanged man in Tarot, I wonder if I could do this. He's right side up when he's upside down because the triangle is a symbol of spirit and the cross is a symbol of material world. And I find this comes up a lot when people are worried about what people will think, if they have the right things, if they'll like me. I'm afraid of conflict. Without that centeredness, it makes us upside down. There is no leaves on these trees. There's nothing growing. And the rods in the deck, they're little oak leaves. Okay, we're hung up. This is a leap of faith. This is us needing to go places where we can't see what's going on. Now, that is also a part of astrology because there's so many different ways to use the elements. I lived in LA. It's sunny. I don't like sun. I'm back in Seattle. Oh, I love the rain. Same weather, different people, different desires. Okay. So it's seeing things from a different point of view. That's another thing that we just talked about. Here is another example of when there's really tough squares in a chart. I get the impression that there's an argument. Okay. So this argument is Gemini, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? Versus Virgo again. That's not right. That's not right. And that's not right. Especially Pluto, Uranus together, Virgo. Ouch. Nothing's right. And it's chaos no matter what you do. If they argue, this person is stuck. This person is stuck. So again, one at a time. No crosstalk, no interruption. This one says, well, let's get more information. Let's think about this. What if we did this? What if we did this? And all this Virgo, you go out and play, man. It's a difference between drafting something and then bringing in the editor, right? Okay, when you draft a poem, blah, 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 you're in the moment, you're drafting. When you come back with the editor, you go, okay, do I want it to rhyme? Do I want to have stanzas? Is that the right word? Okay, but usually the creative person and the polishing person are different times. Honoring those voices, however, I believe helps what I think for here, 5 years old. And let's see, 5 to 5, 10 years old. I take the arc and I assume and ask the question, did something happen at this age that might have brought, for instance, There was a death in the family. There was some chaos. There was something. Now, I'm not a therapist. We don't have to go back there, but using that energy, I think really helps, because I've found people who have, like, they would have this aspect 0 degrees or one degree. And I say, you had a visceral scare at 1 years old. And it could have been a slammed door. It could have been your parents didn't hear you crying in bed. But there was a survival impression of fear. And so we undo it with some other kind of picture of that. And this goes to spirituality, because it goes, how can we harmonize fear and faith? You're safe now. You're safe now. So I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe is a chant and this is scientific, to redesign those neurotransmitters. I mean, chants, I think, are much more useful than affirmations. Affirmations got too many words, but I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm good, I'm really good, I'm good. And I tell people, you gotta say that to the inside of your toes. Believe it. Because sometimes I'll be with somebody, go, okay, say I'm safe. I guess I'm safe. Oh no. No, that's not what I said. Well, I think I might be safe. No, that's not what I said. I'm safe. That is, I think that, in the beginning was the word. We need to have the words very clear. Okay, I think I'm almost, no, where am I? I'm on the wrong page. Okay, yes, okay. 6:50. Oh, I'm done. I'm way done. Sorry, guys. Okay, yes, and there's yin yang. We're yin yanging along, and there's me. Everybody gets 20 minutes free. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. That was so good, Katie.
Sorry. Yes.
No, that was excellent. I actually had not heard the phrase, when you were talking about the glass is half empty, the glass is half full, the glass is refillable. That is absolutely wonderful. So if you have a question for Katie, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question or make a comment, whatever is going to work for you. Oh my goodness, Jermaine says, thank you for such an inspiring presentation, Katie. That was awesome. Thank you, Jermaine. I also loved, and I hadn't heard this, of course, because you made it up, called snitting. What is that?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love the way you help people reframe what it is they believe. Just reframe it so that they can shift that belief.
I hope. Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful what you do. And Justin or David, do you guys have any questions?
Or comments.
Or comments?
Stuff,
All right. Oh, Justin, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I thought it was a great presentation. I mean, I wanted to comment also on David's as well. I didn't get a chance to. I mean, I think it's interesting that everybody tonight is talking a lot about in this first night of the healing summit here is basically based on emotions and thinking and how we think. We start off with Mercury presentation of how we're thinking, and then David brings in almost what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, a little bit about the importance of meditation. As a Buddhist, I also love David's Yogananda there in the back and the mandala there. It's we see in today's world this delusion of people with their unsettled emotions, and I think it was great how Katie brought that into play in looking at certain charts and how and just giving some structure behind the elements that we see there, and how we can relate and see emotions and delusional thinking, belief systems in the charts, and then how we can use, speak to that and help people make better choices or different perspectives and using meditation as a tool. So I enjoyed everybody's talk tonight, and it all kind of leads into mine tomorrow. So have awesome talks tonight.
As planned. I love it. Oh my goodness.
Thank you also, Katie, also for dealing with squares about no cross-talking. Brilliant. Just thank you. Little just gems all throughout your talk, and
Thanks.
Oh,
much
yeah.
appreciated.
I have a quick question for the group, and I guess maybe it's not necessarily make sure can you guys hear me okay?
Oh yeah, we hear you.
Okay. I've just been kind of experimenting with like the I Ching, and was kind of wondering, Katie, because you brought in like Tarot and the Kabbalah and different things like that. And I was just curious if anybody else has experimented combining the I Ching with astrology. Some of the things I've done that I found like really insightful and just kind of mind-blowing at times is if I'm questioning like what a particular part of my chart might mean or symbolize, or even like generically, like, because I have a lot of 12th house planets, and so that house is always mysterious to me. And you'll find all kinds of stuff, online and in astrology readings about, what the 12th house is. And it can range from, prison and mental institutions to enlightenment and service and all of these different things. And finally it dawned on me, like, I have a tool that maybe can help me figure out what that means for me in particular. And I did ask the I Ching, kind of what it thought the 12th house represented. And the answer I got back was just really like insightful, in that it talked about the 12th house being the place where you let go, like you learn to let go of things so that you can serve others without having like, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but basically without having like that ulterior motive or that agenda. Like you're able to like serve others fully because you've let go of the need for like the ego, satisfaction and so forth. And I mean, it was just, I don't know. And I've asked some other different things of the I Ching, and I've really started like using it a lot more. And it's just, I don't know, I find it interesting. So I've started thinking a lot more about the interconnectedness of those two systems, and was just wondering if anyone is doing that in their own practices.
I agree. And if you look at it, it follows the season also.
Right.
How the glyphs go. So yeah, we can talk about that sometime. I do that every morning. Yeah.
You do it every morning. I love that.
Well, and like some of the older, so like in the older history of astrology, like I know they used to use like an 8-house system. And in that 8-house system, it's based on time. And it actually moves clockwise, like in relation to the movement of the sun. And that's the direction that the I Ching mandala flows. And so I found that interesting too. And just even that, in the I Ching mandala, like if you put the hexagrams in a circle, the uppermost point where the midheaven would be represents south, which is just the same layout as the natal chart. And it also represents, I think, father and then mother below. And, we always have that question of, is mother in the 10th house or the 4th house? And I don't know, it's just interesting to me that there's so many parallels. And
I agree.
I was just thinking of that when you were bringing up the other systems that you've used.
It's true. And that's why I love combining them all the time. Thank you so much.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh my God.
I also want to, I was going to tell you, Jermaine, if you're really interested in, and you're using the I Ching, there's a really great system that combines both the I Ching and astrology.
Oh, good.
And it's called Human Design.
All right.
And if you're really into the I Ching and you're really wanting to see how it relates to your astrology, because in the Human Design, they use the circle, and it's a really great system. So I would, Jermaine, I would look at Human Design.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We can certainly tomorrow night, in the forum, we can actually talk about this in more detail, because I love the I Ching, and I never know whether it's the I Ching or I Ching. It's sort of like Uranus, Uranus, Uranus.
Yep.
I don't even know. But oh my goodness. But thank you all for being here tonight. This is, of course, the first night, and it is a pleasure. We've had a wonderful evening. I have a quote that I found that I want to read to you, and it says, "When you reach for the stars, you are reaching for the furthest thing out there. When you reach deep to yourself or into yourself, it is the same thing, but in the opposite direction. If you reach in both directions, you will have spanned the universe." This is by Vera Nazarene. And for me, that's what this retreat is all about. Reaching far into the universe and reaching within ourselves. So thank you all for a lovely, lovely evening. And I will see you back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Tomorrow we have Justin. Justin will give his talk first, and then I will give my talk, which is on the moon. And after that, we will have a panel discussion where everybody will have a conversation and just talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening.